All right, welcome back to just another solar podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me, Karl Jensen. Hey, Karl.
That's me. How you doing, Luke?
Good, thank you. And industry legend and Hall of Famer, Nigel Morris. How are you, mate?
That's me. G'day, fellas.
Now, the most notable thing about you today, Nige, is that you're at home. You've got a fire in the background there. Looks amazing. I can't remember you being at home. You've been all over the country and yacht clubs and golf clubs. How is it to be home, mate?
It's good, mate. It's good, but I do have a fire outside. We're moving house in a couple of weeks, and there's a whole lot of garden waste and bits and pieces that need to go. So, the fire's alight. We'll clean the place out, and we're gone in a week. But, it's great to be home.
Yeah, good stuff. Because I get the impression that solar analytics, it's still very old school. Pound the pavement, get out to the trade shows, get out to the customers. Everywhere you turn on socials, either yourself, Kathleen, Thornton have been covering every corner of the country.
Well, that's an interesting observation, actually, because, for a software company, we probably shouldn't be old school. But, you can't beat pounding the pavement, mate. You can't beat meeting people. We've got a product that, any software product in the solar industry is you don't have to have software, so to speak, although it's getting ever more like that. But we've got a lot of work to do to explain the benefits and the value of software like anyone in our industry. So you can't beat face-to-face times. And it's great, seeing old people and new people. There were some great stories that Karl was telling off air that probably won't be repeated about some of the young people in the industry and how they were bonding with their peers.
I called Karl yesterday. I was heading home from a lunch, and you guys were heading back from the SIA conference in Geelong. So you were driving Karl's Tesla. I think Kathleen, Blair Pester were in the car, and there was a bit of karaoke going on. Karl?
Yeah, I think Kathleen was quite enjoying the technology.
A big shout out to Sam Craft, who juggles motherhood, recent motherhood, business, a wise, and the Australian government has appointed her as Australia's Equality in Energy Transition Ambassador. Sam's a big friend of the show. She's been on this before, and congrats, Sam.
Yeah, what an amazing accolade and recognition of the great work Sam does. That's fantastic.
On the show today, we've got our special guest. Now, this special guest is not only a friend of mine and Karl and someone that we've known for many years now, but Craig Donohue is the Managing Director of Clean NRG, based here in WA, and we'd just like to welcome you to the show, Craig.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks for having me on.
I thought you were the founder and CEO, Craig.
Yeah.
Insert title here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's your business. You can come up with whatever title you like, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a sole proprietor or managing director or founder, as Bryn Folletta likes to call himself.
Before we kick into some topics, do you want to give us a brief outline of how you came to be in the industry and the journey of Clean NRG?
Start from when you were at school, Craig.
Yeah. Look, I've always wanted to be in the customer service business. I always liked the idea of figuring out why people buy things and how they make those buying decisions. So I've always been in sales. I was the state manager of Toshiba Consumer Goods for 18 years and dealt with Harvey Normans and Retrovisions and, all the good guys and JB Hi-Fi and all the rest of it, and a whole lot of independents as well. And so you get to know those businesses quite well over the years, and you see the successes and the failures, and you can reflect on those and look back to sort of say, well, what was that guy doing wrong? Why did he go broke? And why did the guy that was down the road from him to succeed? What were the traits that he had, and what can I learn from that? And that was kind of like the university of life for me, or my business school, where I could figure out, what worked and what didn't work. And this is the third business that I've had on my own. I've had two other businesses, and this has been the most successful.
Do you think the difference from consumer electronics, though, is that was an established industry, whereas when you came into solar in 2010, even the experienced people in the industry were still feeling their way through?
Yeah, I mean, consumer electronics back in the day, early days of consumer electronics, I worked for, before I worked for Toshiba, I worked for Sanyo. And we were getting 140 people turning up to microwave demonstrations because there was this magic box that cooked a pie in 5 minutes. And it was like, and it was just incredible. People were so fascinated. And I do those presentations now. It's a part of the business. And we get 100 people turning up to find out about solar. So it's kind of not that much difference. And, in the consumer electronics business, with VHS rocked up and flat screen TVs, and there was a whole lot of new technology that sort of came. So there's always something new to talk about. Where that business, it has gone a bit stale. There's not a lot of new innovation coming. The TVs are getting bigger and cheaper. But not a lot else has happened. Everything's going online, I guess, now with that business.
So how do you build a crowd of 100-odd people to hear about solar and batteries? How have you done that?
Yeah, well, we partner with the councils, but we also have done partnerships with Rotary, the Rotary clubs and the Lions clubs and community groups. We're partners with the Switch Your Thinking organisation, which is a government body that consults to councils and helps councils become greener. And so they have their own sort of events and we tag along with those events. So I become a guest speaker on those events, or I have my own gigs through those organisations. I guess it's something that I really enjoy because I'm a bit of a showman. I love getting up in front and talking to people and doing my song and dance routine. So, you really, for me, I feel alive when I'm doing those gigs. And I get a lot out of it. And it's great for business too, because people love it. Our conversion rate after those events is amazing.
Craig, I'm really interested because we had a guest speaker at Sea of Victoria, which Karl and I have just come back from yesterday. And he was an accountant and a business coach. And he was kind of characterising the profitability and the challenges for electrical businesses, which most solar businesses kind of fall into. And, he was describing it as being a very challenging small business environment. And I'm really interested. Your experience is vast. What's your secret to success in making your business work in what is a really competitive environment with a lot of regulations and a lot of traps for the unwary? You've clearly made a success of your business. What's your secret, man?
It's kind of taking one day at a time and learning from your mistakes. It's maintaining your margin. It's knowing how much it costs you to run your business every week, every month, every year. It's knowing how much you have to make out of each job to make that a success. And it's sticking to your guns and letting the cheap business walk. I mean, if you can't make money out of a job, let's move on to the next customer where you can, because you've not in this business, in the solar business. Not only do you sell the product, but you've got to look after that customer for years to come. They're going to be ringing you up and it's all fallen over, or the red light's on, and what am I going to do? So you've really got to pick your market. We kind of try and. When we first started, we opened up we were still in Osborne Park, but we opened up on the main drag in Osborne Park. And we really wanted to capture the western suburbs of Perth. And in Perth, the western suburbs are the affluent suburbs. And for the first 5 or 6 years, we got nothing from that area. They didn't care about their electricity bill back then. We were selling systems out in the boondocks in the middle class suburbs. And now eventually those western suburbs, I'm not sure what it is, whether it's they want to be seen to be green, or because their neighbours got solar and a battery, well, they need to get solar and the battery. It's keeping up with the Joneses or whatever it is. But now the western suburbs have gone off for us, and we're kind of specialising now in that mega mansion stuff. And there's lots of mining money in Western Australia. There's lots of mega mansions, and when they build a house in the western suburbs, you can tell it's a big house because there's a crane installed to build the house. It's that's what's happening over here. It's massive.
So on that note, Craig, obviously you've been to numerous trade shows and events over the years. In fact, we can recount stories all over the world together. It's great rubbing shoulders with those other people, but you've managed to pick out some products in particular that have been a real winner for your business. Can you fill us in on those?
One of the things that I learnt in the consumer electronics business is to avoid rebadged product. Anything that is not from the original equipment manufacturer, I avoid. You can't avoid it completely these days, but I try and pick the products that are made by the company that's selling the product. And that's why we're sort of big with Feronius, and we're also big with Tesla. And we're trying to consolidate those brands as much as we can, because that's where the value is, as far as we're concerned. We can give good service with those brands and those products, and we're selling those brands and those products for those suppliers. And because we're selling them, they're giving us good service as well. So that's, a part of the ethos, I guess, to try and be loyal to our manufacturers and our suppliers. And so we can then be loyal to our customers.
Yeah. So in doing something like the Tesla Powerwall, Craig, you reckon probably the customers looking for the cheap seats aren't coming to you, and you're getting a customer that's prepared to spend more money in the first place?
The Tesla Powerwalls have got a bit of brag value. I mean, and over the years, we've found out in sales that people buy emotionally, and then they defend their sale, that purchase, with logic.
And we call that the Thermomix effect, yeah?
Yes.
So no one ever says that their Thermomix is a waste of $2,000 because they've spent $2,000 and they go.
Yeah, I love it how they defend it.
Everyone should have one.
$2,000 on it.
It's a fucking mix-up.
But now, Craig, you were jumping into batteries well before a lot of solar companies were over here in WA. And as a footnote, I think you're currently the largest installer of Tesla Powerwalls in WA, or you have been in recent times.
Yeah.
So you were sort of ahead of the curve on that when it was still in I'd call it the experimental phase, the guinea pig phase, where we don't have mature solutions. We're moving towards more mature battery solutions. So where are the frontiers? What are the products that you're looking at now that aren't completely mainstream yet, but you see the opportunity?
The Tesla Powerwall has been great for us and the business. One of the main reasons people buy batteries isn't for the financial payback. It's because they lost $2,000 worth of crayfish out of their freezer last time the power went off, or they see how much power is going back to the grid. This is a big one for some reason, and they just can't stand the thought of Synergy or the electricity company selling their power to their neighbour for like 10 times the price that they get for it. So
first world problems.
Yeah, people get angry about it, and so that's why they get a battery, and because they want to stick it up the over here at Synergy.
Craig, on that point, we've talked about this before. You've got customers that have got more than 2 Powerwalls, yeah?
Yeah. So for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's designed by Tesla, but a lot of people that buy one Tesla battery and they're looking at their app all the time, and they're seeing that their battery's charged by 10 a.m. So then they think, all that other power is going back to the grid. I want to keep that for myself. So give me another Tesla Powerwall. And you say, well, you're not even flattening that one overnight. I don't care. I want another one because I don't want that power going back to the grid. I don't want to give that power away and have to buy it back, So they get all up. I don't care how much it costs. I just want to get it.
Yeah, I'll burn it. I'll set fire to it before I give it away.
So this really interests me, Craig, because I've heard that story so many times, and we've watched the market be early adopters on various different bits of technology over the decades. And Does that mean you're fair, square, right in the middle of an early adopter where economics make no fucking sense at all, and they're just doing it to stick it to the man and because they can? How long's that going to last? Because, of course, when we get to technology adoption curves, what really makes sense and gets interesting from a business perspective is when you get past those people who are the early adopters and you get into the mass adoption curve. It sounds like you're on the edge of that, but how far away is it in your view?
Yeah, I still think it's early adopters, but getting back to that point before that I made, that people buy emotionally, then defend the sale with logic afterwards. I think that is going to flow through to the mass market as well, because I think it doesn't matter who's buying it, you kind of buy emotionally. And to find out what that trigger is for the client, why they bought it, is often difficult because they don't want to tell you. What they'll tell you is, look, it's to protect my family, power security. I don't like, having when the power goes out, I don't, want to have power. And so they're the logical answers, but it's that emotion that you have to try and tap into and let them buy, give them the means to do it and let them do it.
Let's take a macro view then. So we're talking about residential, early adopters. Take a step back. So the federal budget was released, but so was the WA budget in the same week. And as part of that, the WA government committed money, billions of dollars, towards a 500 megawatt hour battery in Collie, which is a traditional coal mining and coal-fired generation site. And they want to shut down the coal-fired plants there. Committed to 200 megawatt hours in Kwinana. And we're seeing this around the country where the state governments are getting on board, the federal government's getting on board. In the last episode, Karl brought it up, courtesy of Saul Griffith, that we're not actually reducing our CO2 emissions at this point in time. And I saw some research this morning that said there's a possibility that we're going to hit that 1.5 degree increase by 2030. So we've all been talking about 2050. So it's like, holy shit, there's another story in PV Magazine about curtailment of solar projects. We need more solar, more batteries immediately. And really, early adopters aren't going to get us there. We need the early adopters. We need that curve to go up quickly for residential. We need government to support it for grid scale batteries and a shit ton more solar and wind and anything else we can get on there that's not burning fossil fuels.
It's a shit ton more solar. So the takeaway for me at the moment is not that batteries in residential areas need to go in, but the kink in that hose is 400 kilometres away or 500 kilometres away. And that's the transmission problem. And of course, everyone would have read that in the various magazines as well. The AEMO are arguing with other people as to whether a transmission interconnector should be built between New South Wales and Victoria. I'm always a fan of that stuff. So at the end of the day, renewable energy is useless if you can't get it to where it needs to go, and those interconnectors will get used one way or another. So we should be building all of that stuff. But yeah, who knows? It's complicated.
I've been an advocate for years about home batteries. Of course, it's a vested interest for me. We're in that business, and I'd love to have everyone have a home battery and for it to be affordable for everybody. And I think that'll make a big difference because it'll soak up that solar during the day and it'll relieve the load on the grid at night. And that's basically what the battery does. So my argument is that rather than build these big batteries around the place, they're better off, giving a rebate to the consumers to put little batteries in homes everywhere. We even had a petition and we went to Bill Johnson with it. I got 3,000 signatures on
He was the energy minister and now the treasurer in WA.
He still is. He's the energy and the justice minister. So if you don't toe the line, he'll put you in jail as well. So
it's all right. There's only about 4 MPs in WA Parliament, so they have to spread it around.
Yeah. So and look, we had a meeting with him. We got a meeting and we went into Parliament House, and you can see where they're spending the money because they're like oak-lined walls and all the wainscoting and the very fancy tables and chairs in there. And they just were not interested. They said, "Look, we've got 2 power companies to keep profitable, Synergy and Horizon, And he said, I'm not going to give a rebate, and because that'll take away their revenue. That's what he was more worried about, making sure that Horizon and Synergy were profitable, which they're not. We're topping them up to like $500 million a year every year. So, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, we know that batteries don't last forever. For me, the better solution is, as you say, Craig, it's home batteries. And for winter, it's got to be wind. We need more wind assets than we've got demand. And if we have to turn them out of the wind when it's windy and there's no demand, well, so be it. Forever.
We're talking about state government rebates. Really, if you look at the scheme that really set off the solar panels and got, one of the highest rates of rooftop deployment in the world, that was under a federal scheme. And we still see it with the STCs and LGCs and certificates. So is it the responsibility of state governments, or do we need a national scheme that's going to be similar to STCs or something similar on batteries? Because our government has committed to 80% figure by 2030. And the only way we're going to get there, we're actually not getting there any quicker and not as urgent as we have to. So really, it's going to take a federal government scheme, in my opinion, to actually make it happen as quickly as we need it to.
I agree with that, Luke, because I think the Victorian scheme was a bit of a disaster. Wasn't there a Victorian battery scheme that fell flat? They were going to sell, 5,000 batteries and they sold 500.
Queensland too.
Yeah,
fell flat. So you got to. Yeah, rebates are so vexed, right? Because they've got to be well timed, they've got to be well aimed, they've got to be well administered. And they've got the amount of money has got to be exactly on the spot to make it work. And as we know, look at every scheme, state or federal, they are driven entirely by the politics, not by the outcomes. And so if there's votes in it, like we had in New South Wales when they had the 60-cent feed-in tariff that the entire industry argued against, I stood up in bloody 20 years ago probably now and stood up with the entire industry and said, you don't need 60 cents. You need about 35 cents as a gross feed-in tariff. That'll make it work. And they said, oh, yeah, that sounds good. And the opposition came out and leaked the fact that they thought 60 cents would win them the election. And so the incumbent government said, okay, we'll do 60 cents. And they threw in a ridiculous tariff that sent the market into a frenzy. And so I think there's a huge role for rebates in getting early technology adopted. I completely agree with that. But I have yet to see a state or a federal government do it properly and for the right reasons. They're always doing it for political motivation rather than, actually structurally getting it right. Probably with the one exception, and I do agree with the FTCs. The FTCs have worked very, very well. It auto-adjusts every year. It follows the decline in the technology cost and everything else. But they're long overdue to do something on storage, and let's hope someone finally gets it bloody right.
Well, on that note, we still know that batteries that are on the grid actually aren't 100% efficient. So unless that efficiency is accounted for, then currently we're burning more coal to have those batteries on the grid. What would be a smarter idea is to have new term that I invented at the SEA conference is rolling storage, and that is batteries with steering wheels. So at the end of the day, we've got the technology to charge those batteries or not charge those batteries with very basic API controls, and the grid operators have got access to that. The software's already there, and rather than losing efficiency and putting it back into the grid when the grid's got plenty of renewables or whatever, we can be using it to not buy oil from overseas. As we said earlier, Nigel had a drive of the Tesla. Craig, you've pretty much changed your life with yours. Yeah, give us the difference. What's the difference between a Hilux and a Model 3?
Yeah, so after driving the Tesla for 3 or 4 weeks, the ute was sitting in the yard, the Hilux, and I needed to do a delivery and jumped in the ute, and I thought I was driving a Model T Ford or something, or a tractor. I'm like, what is this thing? So you get spoilt with a Tesla. It's just it's an amazing bit of kit. It's like a magic carpet. You get in it and drive it, and you get out of it and walk away. It locks itself, does everything automatic. It's incredible. But one of the things that and Karl, you'd probably be able to fill us in about this. The exciting thing that a lot of people ask me about is the vehicle to grid. They also say, "I'll get my vehicle to grid," but as far as I know, that it's very hard to get that device approved by any of the utilities. I think South Australia is the only one that has got some approved. They're very expensive. They're $10,000. And, it's a great idea, but for some reason, it hasn't got any traction at all.
But in the interim, one of the most effective ways you can do it now is similar to yourself, Karl. We're having a look when I was in Melbourne last week. You've got Charge HQ, you've got Amber. So you've got the market pricing, which sends a signal for when people should be charging. So it's not just about being able to push back to the grid. It's being able to pull from the grid at the times where the grid has excess energy. You can put rebates, you can incentivize it, but the best incentive is market-based ones where, you've got a positive or negative wholesale price. If your retail price is tied to that, it's going to encourage people to charge at the right time. So even without pushing to the grid, charging at the right time with your EVs and your major loads is going to have a big impact on the issues that we see on the grid.
Yeah, well, that sort of leads into the VPP discussion, and I'm still disappointed that the VPP rates that people get offered aren't even remotely comparable to the cycle cost of the hardware that they've got. We all know that batteries have a finite life, and if the cycle cost is 55 cents a kilowatt hour or 45 cents a kilowatt hour, and the cost of energy that you're being asked to export is 25 or 30 cents, customer thinks that this is great because it only cost them 5 cents to generate it, and they forget about the cost of the battery. It surprises me every day how many people are participating in these VPP schemes, and basically they're losing money. Might as well be sending them off to the casino so they can feed dollar coins into the machines.
Yeah, I was chatting with one of someone at the Sea of Vic conference, actually, who was talking about a fellow he'd met in New Zealand. And this guy had made his money on software. He was a brilliant software engineer, made his fortune, and went, bugger this, I'm buying a cherry farm. And he bought a cherry farm, and he did all the economics on solar and batteries and everything else and electric vehicles, and insisted that all the supplies that were coming in all had to be delivered by electric vehicles. He put, massive amounts of solar and massive amounts of batteries and managed to cost that into his cherry farm and got it all up and running beautifully. And then went, hang on, the problem I've got here is that I'm being rorted on the retail rates. The retail rates are affecting everything that I do, and I can't buy and I can't sell effectively. So he wrote a piece of software to switch himself between retailers, and he was switching retailers 4 times a day using a piece of software, right? And flipping between all these different retailers to make sure he's leveraging everything he can get. And so there are some wonderful examples, whether it's that or one guy doing something really clever because he's a genius and he's got the money, or VPPs in Australia, which have really kind of failed to deliver the value that we were all hoping they would. All of these things are possible, and a VPP and using batteries on wheels is something I'm passionate about, Karl. I'm right with you. I think it's the most sensible use of the technology. But the reality is that what we've got to do is find ways that the people involved in this value chain can make a buck out of it along the way, so they can run their business and they can make a little bit of a profit along the way to keep the wheels turning. And there's got to be enough value for the customers as well.
Quickly, Nigel, you said if that fire behind you got out of control that I should let you know your house is burning down.
Oh, thanks, mate. No. I threw a couple of chairs on. The chairs.
So just for background here, for people who are listening, Nigel started with this small fire in the background, and he's been getting up intermittently and dumping more stuff on the fire. It's a fair bonfire behind you.
It's a bonfire. Nigel. Yeah, it's here. I've got a friend coming around later on. I promised him there'd be a good fire. So I've still got a couple of tables I've got to get rid of too. So, but yeah, no, I think it's a really, really interesting thing that we will get to, whether it's VPPs or whether it's vehicle to grid or vehicle to load or whatever it is. All of those things are going to come, but I just don't see the value yet. And as a business, whenever we've looked at it, we did massive studies into VPP along with many other people. And the reality is with a VPP, there's a couple of $100 in it for a customer at the moment. There's a couple of $100 a year. You can make more money than that for a solar customer just by making sure they're on the right retail tariff at the moment. You can make $400 a year, as we've demonstrated, just by switching them to the right tariff. So VPP is a really nice idea, but we've got to re-engineer the whole bloody way that the energy industry is built in Australia to make VPPs really realise the value and allow that value to be extracted efficiently, and same with vehicle to grid, and same with all these other different things. So, We really need to see. I remember talking to someone from the AER once about this and saying, do we just need to burn the grid? Do we just need to blow it up and start all over again? How there's a lot of challenges.
Well, the fire's already going in the background there, Nigel. You just pile it on top, mate.
just pop it on top. All right, I'll start pulling power lines down.
So another hit we wanted to have with Craig was around staff, and Craig's had some pretty incredible staff over the years and some amazing sort of staff stories. Craig, can you tell us a bit about something that, your most recent staff disaster?
Any businessman will tell you that staff are the most important things in your business. Staff are more important than your customers, because if you look after your staff, they will look after your customers. A real focus to that I do, and we try and get that family atmosphere and that family feeling. And if the kid's sick, go home, stay home. There's no family first. All the rest of it. Yeah, but what I think Karl's talking about is we had one of our guys who's been with us over 5 years, went in for a routine operation a few weeks ago, and talking to his wife after the operation, and said, "Don't bother about coming in tonight. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And she got a phone call at 5 o'clock that morning from the surgeon to say that he passed away in his sleep. So it was a real shock to everybody. And Eamon was a great sales guy. He was a great guy, and we really miss him here. So things change all the time in business. People come and go, but you don't expect them to die.
How do you manage it with the team? I imagine initially everyone's just reeling a bit.
No one could believe it, really. It was like a really surreal experience. We were kind of looking up to waiting for him to rock in the next day, and his wife, of course, completely devastated.
That's just awful, mate. And businesses go through tragedies like that, and really a lot of condolences go out to that family and to you guys as well, because no doubt he was part of your business family, right? And that's the other issue that businesses face all the time, where they've got to upscale rapidly, and they've also sometimes got to downscale rapidly. How have you faced those challenges over the years on the solar coaster?
Yeah, by working harder and when it's all going well, to try and take a break when you can. There's often it's a Saturday and Sunday to catch up, and working late nights and that sort of stuff. So, but look, I'm not saying that I've been working hard all the time. That you've got to have time for fun as well. And I love having a beer with the reps. I find, from my point of view, that the reps and our suppliers are a part of the business, because without them, it doesn't work. So I always try and make time for the reps, no matter who they are, and really value their input and their knowledge. I'm not an electrician, so I rely on the reps and my Sparkies, on my team of Sparkies, to guide me, and so we can all make the right decision together, and all try and get a drink out of it, so we can all make money, because that's the important thing.
I want to ask you, Craig, as someone who's been in the industry, ridden the solar coaster, I would say had built a very good business. What advice would you give out to the industry more generally? Not just someone starting out, but someone who might be running a business or involved in a business and they seem to be in a lull or a bit of a plateau. What advice would you give?
Don't sell yourself short. Know what you're worth, and make sure you know how much it's costing you to run your business, and stick to your guns. If you've got to add value to the products, and that value is perceived service, often that value is a perceived value. So it's loyalty and trust and friendship, and it's salesmanship to make sure that client is comfortable. It's all about sales, really, because if you're not making sales, you're not in business. You got to make sure that those sales are profitable, because if they're not, you're going to go broke and you're going to be no good to your clients. So it's having that balance, finding that balance where you can talk to your client and say, look, I am making a profit out of this because I need to stay in business. that's the way it works, and most people will understand that. So yeah, it's being honest and open with your clients and giving them the options and guiding them through the process, because it's complicated for a lot of people. So yeah, that's where we try and make sure we know how much it costs to run the business. How many sales we need to make and what margin we need to make to keep the ball rolling.
And Nigel's back from the fire again. That thing's blaring, mate. How's the heat?
The heat's good, but I just heard the neighbour's smoke alarm go off, so we're going to have to wrap it up soon.
So, on that, while we're talking about finances and making sales and so on, one of the things that did really stand out for me at the SEA conference was the accountant was talking a lot about super and people having self-managed super funds and so on and so forth. And it comes up a lot with friends and people in the industry. A lot of us have got well short of what we need. So there's a small message from the SEA conference. It was definitely for everyone to have a look at their super and suss it out, because as we know, everything's expensive. So having a good nest egg there is critically important, and there's lots of ways of doing it through your business. If you are in business, you need to be seeing your accountant at least twice a year, preferably 4 times a year, and talking about these sorts of things with your accountant.
Yeah, your accountant's important, but so is your doctor. I was talking to one of the reps the other day. I said, when was the last time you had your bloods done? He said, I've never had my bloods done. He's like 48 years old. I said, what are you doing? Go and get your bloods done and get your tests, get your cholesterol, get your PSA, get your health checked. What are you doing? So the health check and the financial health check is just as important. A lot of these guys think they're bulletproof, but nobody's bulletproof.
Well, there's a good message. Anyone listening here who hasn't, particularly 40 plus, who hasn't been to a doctor, had their bloods, had the checkup, well, go and do it now. Book it in. It's not that hard.
I'd echo Karl's comments, actually, that the nice thing about SEA Vic was they had a really nice array of speakers on a whole variety of topics. But the thing that business coach reminded me of, having run my own business some years ago, is that it's a real trap for everyone, especially in small and medium-sized business, that you get so focused on just doing whatever it is, selling solar panels or selling batteries, and you get obsessed with the success of your business being entirely reliant on you being 100% focused on that. But it's not. It's also reliant on cash flow. It's reliant on you building a nest egg. It's someone wise once said to me, when I started my business, did I have an exit plan for the day that I decided I want to get out of that business? And anyone who's in business should have an exit plan for the day that they decide they want to flip it or sell it or close it down or whatever it is. Personal health, physical health, staff, all those kinds of things. Interesting thing for me was meeting a bunch of young guys at SEA Vic who just come into the solar industry. They were typically electrical trades guys, realised there was an opportunity to add solar to their business and jumped across, and off they went, and they were on fire, early 20s, mid-20s, whatever, full of gusto and full of everything else. And, the one thing that I could impart from my own personal experience and some of the great lessons we got at SEA Vic was you've got to get that balance right.
Now, we're going to wrap up shortly. Craig Donohue from Clean NRG, it's been great to have you on. Do you have any parting words of wisdom or anything you want to share out there?
I just sort of bit of a shout out to my competitors. Can you lift your margins a bit? Because it's just like, we all got to make some money here. And I don't know if some of you guys know how much it costs to actually do business. So some of the quotes that you get through, I think, wow, is this guy for real? So, I'd like to, some of those guys need to get some business coaching and figure out, how much it's going to cost to run their business. So, my plea is to my competitors to lift their margins.
Actually, on that, Craig, I have to get you to tell the story about your Sparky of a couple of years that quoted one of your customers that you sent out to do a site inspection. Please share that story with us. It's going to take a couple of minutes, but it's worth it for everybody.
Well, having contractors, you have to coach them. You've got to coach all your staff. But we do coach our staff to sort of say, this is our customer. You have your customers. We're not going to poach your customers. Please don't poach ours. So we sent one of our electricians out to do a site inspection because we weren't sure of how to quote it. It was a bit of a tricky job. So we pay him to go out and do it. So we pay him $165 to go out and do a site inspection. He went out and gave us back the report, his quote of what we was going to do. And then the client came to us with a quote from the electrician and sort of said, oh, look, I'm not sure which quote to go for because is this you guys or is this the electrician? And so, we got him in and like that year, I paid that electrician over $300,000 in invoices.
That's disgraceful.
And so, that next year I paid him zero because I said, look, that's the last job that you'll ever do for us. So goodbye. So that was it. So I won't name him, but I mean, it was a real disappointment. But, that's you just got to stay tough on that. And look, we tell that story to all our other contractors. so they know what's going to happen if they do, poach our customers. So,
who would have thought that it's possible for someone that you paid $300,000 in the previous year to shit in his own nest for the tune of a few $1,000s on one?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the guy's obviously an idiot.
We're going to call time there. Craig, it's been great to have you on. Craig Donohue from Clean NRG. Any parting words, Karl, Nigel?
Yeah, I'll jump in and just throw a quick shout out to the guys at Sea Vic. We've touched on them a couple of times, but great show in Victoria. The guys in Solar Cutters had a great show in Adelaide, which Thornton from our team flew over to. She skipped out early from Sea Vic to go and do that for us yesterday. Apparently that was a really good show as well. Good turn up there. And just to close off, a word of warning for WA because Kathleen Ryan is heading your way. There's several shows over there. And the inimitable best First Lady of Solar is on her way to WA next week for several weeks for multiple different shows. I think there's a Solar Cutters, there's a Seer, and there's a home show or two that she's going to jump in and help out on as well. So look out, WA.
Awesome. Bring it on. Well, thanks a lot, guys. And thanks to the listeners. Please like, subscribe, share, add a review, do all that stuff. It helps us get better rankings. And share it around to anyone who might get benefit. Have a good one. Thanks.